evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching India Tonight with me, Sumita Karir, and my colleague Jude Sanith is joining us live from our Chennai studios. Good to have you, Jude. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, tonight on the show, we put the spotlight on a global diplomatic push as India is giving to Russia and EU. They are intensifying their efforts to strengthen ties while trade talks with the United States are showing progress despite recent tariff tensions. In fact, the European Union, India's top trading partner, is fast-tracking a free trade agreement targeting 2025 with a 90% surge in bilateral trade over the past 1 decade, Jude.
Absolutely, and with Russia hitting a record $68.7 billion in trade with India, the country remains a key energy and defense partner, undeterred by Western criticism. Meanwhile, US-India negotiations for a landmark trade deal are advancing, with both sides aiming to double trade to $500 billion by 2030, even as tariff disputes linger. India's multi-alignment strategy is paying off, balancing global powers to boost its 7% economic growth. In fact, to discuss all this and more with us, I'm joined by a retired Major General Dr. G.G. Dwivedi, war veteran, and global strategist and a defense expert, and of course, K.P. Fabian, former ambassador, on also joining us on Zoom. Mr. Fabian, Mr. Dwivedi, if I could come to you first, sir. Definitely the multi-pronged strategy that India is adopting is surely paying rich dividends, especially given that you have Russia and EU on one side and the US on the other as well, with whom India is negotiating that high-profile trade deal. Things looking up for our country, really.
Oh, that's right, because India has always believed in multilateralism, and that's the policy that we are still continuing. We don't believe in zero-sum game. It's in our interest, wherever we find that our interest is well served, we go in for that partnership. So that's the policy that is currently on, even though our relations in trade are slightly strained with USA, but relations as far as defense is concerned still are on the even keel. And of course, European Union is India's big trading partner. We had a trade of about 123 billion euros last year. And Russia, of course, is traditionally the supplies of major armament equipment have been from Russia, though of late this has come down. Their share is just about 30%, whereas France's share is about 50%, USA about 15%. So the point I'm trying to make is that India believes in multilateralism. We buy and trade where our interest lies, and we do not believe in zero-sum game. No, that's the policy that has been, and you are right, is paying us rich dividends even during the difficult times. Over to you.
Right, sir. Let me also come to you in terms of the big announcement that came in today. The Prime Minister today stated that India is inking a JV to produce AK-203 rifles. How critical is this defense partnership that India has struck with Russia, particularly the one that was announced today, both from a defense and staying self-reliant point of view?
Well, the rifle is the basic weapon, and I, as an infantryman, have carried the AK 56 rifle that was in India's main weapon system. But the point is that we need to modernize, and small arms are very critical because we are fighting proxy war with Pakistan, and therefore a rifle is a basic weapon. But ironically, I still feel that we had to go in for TOT with Russia. I think India should be able to produce small arms weapon system on its own, but nonetheless, that didn't happen. So we have signed this deal with Russia to manufacture AK-203 rifle in Bareilly, and that is on track. And India needs this rifle and small arm weapon system because, as I said, we are actually fighting proxy war on daily basis, and infantry weapons are the ones with which infantrymen fights. So therefore, this production of infantry rifle is very, very important, and it is the need of the hour because, as I said, that small arms are the weapons which a soldier fights day in and day out. Over to you, Sumita.
Right. Right, Dr. Dwivedi, Dr.
Right,
Dwivedi,
sir.
if I could come in for just a bit here. While the multi-pronged approach sorry about that. That multi-pronged approach, Dr. Dwivedi, that we were discussing, while it's certainly paying rich dividends for India, the fact remains that you have also the US on one side, blowing hot and blowing cold, especially on the tariffs front with regard to the H-1B visa issue as well. So do you feel that while things may look good, given the fact that India is hedging its geopolitical risks, the fact remains that the country may not exactly be on stable ground vis-a-vis relationships like the one with the United States?
Well, the point is that our relations with the United States are deep rooted and they are strategic in nature. In fact, we are natural strategic partners. Yes, at this present time, there is a certain amount of tension, or I would say disagreement, because of present term policy. He has a fat for tariffs, and to that extent, we are on some uneven ground. But the point is that our relations with the US are just not only trade, because they're a lot beyond it. And despite this bit of turbulence, our relation with America are still very strong. And also, I like to point out that after all, Trump is not America and America is not Trump. So, this phase of turbulence, I think, will go away, and President Trump also changes his policy on everyday basis. So, I'm sure that we'll be able to meet common ground. And as it is, the talks are on for the FTA, and a certain amount of movement is forward. And also H1B visa, I think there's a need for little review, because we are getting the bulk share, 75% of the H1B we are going to us. Maybe there is going to be review of policy, but that's need to be wait and watch. But on the whole, I would say that despite a certain amount of strain as far as the trade is concerned, India-US relations still remain on a very sound ground, especially when you see the larger geopolitical picture as far as Indo-Pacific is concerned, as far as Quad is concerned, and certainly I think our strategic interests are very much aligned with USA, notwithstanding the tough tariff turbulence that we are currently facing. But I think it will even out in time to come. We should not play it ball by ball. We have to look at the larger picture and then tackle this issue with more restraint, patience, and all with long-term policy as far as America is concerned. But I am confident that this turbulent phase, at the end of it, will even out, and our relation should be back on track in sooner than later. Over to you.
Right, sir. Since you're talking about India-US ties, let me also reiterate what the Prime Minister essentially stated this morning. He called Russia a time-tested partner, but would that also mean increasing our energy trade with Russia, given the fact that India's Commerce Minister just yesterday was stating that we expect to increase our energy trade with US, and energy security goals will have a very high element of US involvement?
Yeah, and, that's true, because after the COVID and the Ukraine war, India has been buying a huge amount of energy requirement from Russia. Our imports were only about 2% before around 2022, and they have gone to about 30% of our requirement. And as Prabhu had just mentioned, that our trade with Russia is about $68.7 billion. So that's very much on track. But I'm sure that we'll also be diversifying as far as energy is concerned, because the crude oil prices overall in the globe is almost stable, and we are just getting an advantage of about $2 per barrel. And if this is a major irritant in Indo-US relations, that we are buying Russian oil and therefore fueling up the Ukraine war, I'm sure on that score also, that could be a review, because after all, nations always meet and negotiate, and if certain irritants are there, they can be ironed out. But nonetheless, India exercises strategic autonomy, and we buy and we trade where our interest lies. But nonetheless, I think there could be a review on a energy requirement wholly dependent currently about 30% of Russia. I think we could be diversifying as such, but time to come, we need to see how India actually meets its energy requirement, because that's the key to development, and we'll have to see the global markets and also continue to trade with Russia as heretofore. Sumita.
Yes. Yes. Jude. Right. In fact, I'm also being told we're joined by KP Fabian, retired ambassador, of course. Mr. Fabian, thank you so much for joining us on the phone line. We were discussing energy security concerns and even as India's multi-pronged strategy to diplomacy with the EU, Russia, and the US could well be paying out rich dividends for the country. I want to bring you in on a very specific question, Mr. Fabian. For the longest time now, there's been so much talk about the Russian oil purchases that have put India in a bit of a spot with regard to its relations with the United States. A couple of weeks ago, when U.S. Ambassador designate Sergio Gore was deposing before that Senate Special Committee, he actually put forth the prospect of India looking to increase energy imports from the United States and the US actually making those imports, so to speak, for India available if it would mean the prospect of putting a pause on buying Russian oil and therefore mending ties with the US itself. Do you feel, given the discourse surrounding India's purchases from Russia, that this prospective purchase alternate could be a solid alternative that the country might want to pursue? Mr. Fabian.
Thank you. I think we have to look at it with, in a logical way. For America to argue that it is India that is funding Russia's war on Ukraine, and for an American official to say it is Modi's war and all that, this is absolute nonsense. Secondly, for America to be complaining about India's buying oil from Russia again is absolutely illogical, because America itself is buying palladium, uranium, fertilizer, and whatnot. And India is not the only country that is buying. European Union is buying. So why did President Trump choose only India? So my conclusion is it has nothing to do with our buying American oil. It has two aspects. One is personal. For President Trump, everything is personal. India did not give him any credit for ending the Sindoor, that he has a grouse against India. And second thing is that they want India to buy more oil from America. Now, I see that in the Indian media, we neglect to mention one important point. The pricing of the oil from America is done on a political basis, not on a commercial basis. As we all know, there's a transportation cost. So if we have decided and we have been buying oil from America, it is for political reasons. So this is the big picture. And as regards India's relations with Russia, India will take its own decisions. India will not be, I repeat, will not be dictated by anyone. If President Trump had imagined
Absolutely, Mr. Fabian. Right.
Go ahead.
Right, Mr. Fabian. So that's a decision that India is going to take, and that's going to be on the basis of its own needs and, of course, depending on the oil market and the best prices that it can get globally. But the Commerce Minister, and I was just talking to Major General Dwivedi about it as well, the Commerce Minister stated that energy trade with the United States is going to be a key factor and a key element of India-US trade ties. But given the fact that India is looking at increasing its energy trade with the United States, could it reduce dependence on Russian energy?
Obviously, if we buy more from United States, it is possible that we can reduce what we buy from Russia. That is arithmetic, you see. But the point is, India will do what it has to do in its own interest. But let me make it very clear. Any thought that, we can better our relations with Russia, China, and others, and neglect our relations with the United States, that is wrong. We need to have good relations with the United States, but I will add a rider. We need to shake hands and not to embrace the United States, because embracing the United States can be quite risky. We may not be able to breathe. when it is a tight embrace. So have good relations, but, it has to be a give and take. It cannot be, America's dictating to India. And till now, America has been dictating. But let's see. We have the staying power.
Right then, that's one way of summing it up. India will, of course, move in its own interests, and that is all that should matter to this country. On that note, Dr. Dwivedi, Mr. KP Fabian, thank you so much for joining us on this discussion.